Welcome to Author Adventure. Liz,
Hello.
how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you today, Russ?
Welcome back to Tuesday in the Author Adventure. So
It's great. It's great. So we're here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard, I guess, 4 o'clock Mountain. And we're talking about the art and business of publishing and 5 secrets. What are our 5 secrets, Russ? What do we consider?
Well, we have with our 5 secrets today, we're going to be talking about creating, publishing, launching, marketing, and distribution. Those are the 5 topics. But today we're going to be talking about one near and dear to your heart, making sure that we get the word out. So
we're going to be talking marketing strategy today. So marketing is one of the 5 things that we think you need to be a successful author. And that's what we're sharing each week. We're sharing some kind of a tip from one of these 5 secrets. It may be something about writing. It might be about launching or publishing or distribution. But today we're talking marketing, and we're talking offline marketing. So there's online marketing, which is all the things that happen on your computer or the internet and things like that. But offline marketing still exists, and offline marketing is still an option for people. And there are 2 or 3 pieces of collateral that still work really great. First one is bookmarks. Bookmarks are still really great for anybody that's writing a book or that's got a book published. What you want on that bookmark is you want your picture at the top of the book cover. You want a description of something interesting about that book. And then you want your name and your phone number, your website or your email, or some way for them to contact you. Maybe it's your social media thing. Sometimes that gets a little bit long. You might have to turn your business card sideways so you can see it, or your bookmark. You might have to run it up the back if you've got a long website, but you want to have a way for people to contact you once they walk away. Because even if you're at an event and you've got books for sale, maybe somebody don't want to carry them around. If they're walking around an event or something, they don't want to be lugging around a big sack of books. So what they'll do is they'll pick up your information and then they'll go and order the book later, or maybe they'll come back at the end of the day on their way out and buy that book. So they only have to carry it to the car. Okay. So bookmarks, the number one thing. A business card is still good too. A lot of times a bookmark will replace a business card. But if you don't have good artwork, or you're not able to do that easily or put something together, you can always get a business card done fairly easily online or at your local printer. The other thing is you want to have a flyer, or like what we call a point of purchase. That's going to be a little sign that stands up that has the cover of your book, the price of your book, and your name, and then how to get in touch with you or how to buy the book. It could be on Amazon, it could be the Amazon link, it could be a local store, it could be a retail outlet, whatever that is, you need to put that on that flyer and have that. And so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is postcards. Because a lot of times you could send a postcard to schools or libraries and things like that. And the same thing, on one side, you want your picture of your book, maybe your picture as the author, and then a little description about what the book's about and how they can contact you or how they can buy that book. So you always want to have these pieces with you. You want to carry them with you in the car because, like I say, the same thing. You may be someplace where you don't want to be carrying a bunch of books around, but you really ought to have 1 or 2 books in your purse at all times, or your backpack, or your suitcase, your briefcase, because you never know when you're going to meet somebody and talk to somebody. You could be having coffee, start talking to the person next to you, and they go, "Oh, you're an author? Well, what have you written?" Well, if you can reach right into your bag or your suitcase or your briefcase and say, "Well, here's the book I wrote," set it on the table, they're going to be like, "Oh, well, that's great." And they're going to look at it and they're going to buy it.
One thing I want to mention, Liz, I want to mention, and you could probably expand on it, is when you're doing this, it's often useful if you have a bookmark or you have a postcard or you have some sort of an item that you can give away. It's nice to be able to put a purchase code on there and code that, so you know where the order came from.
Right.
And
so
which piece of content that you're putting out there to where you can actually measure results. So I just want to mention that to
Yeah, so that's
some,
like a QR code or
yeah.
something like that. Like a lot of times you'll see scan your phone. You can scan this card on your thing or this little code. And that goes back and that can kind of tell somebody somewhere, where it's coming from and how it's coming or how it's getting tracked.
Yeah.
So anything like that you can do. Like you say, you want to send them somewhere where you can capture their email, like you say, your website, or maybe it's on social media. But the problem with social media is, somebody can like or they can comment or they can be your friend, but you don't necessarily have their emails and things like that. And so that's why we always encourage our authors to include email capture on their website. That's why we encourage you to have your own website. Those are those online things that we'll talk about at another time. But we've got a great author interview here today, and so I want to go ahead and introduce our guest today, and then I'm going to turn it over to Russ, and he's gonna do the actual interview, and then maybe I'll jump back in at the end. But this is Jean Maxwell. Jean's a longtime friend, and we met through a business group a few years ago online, and so we've been friends ever since. Just hit it off because she's very creative, as you can tell behind her there, and I'm a creative, and we're both kind of bookheads and readers and writers. And so Jean, welcome to the show. So nice to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to
11.
see you guys.
You bet. So I'm going to drop out. I'm going to let Russ kind of do the interview with you because you and I know each other and we've talked a lot about different stuff. But I'll jump back in on the end and we'll wrap up a little bit if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
Well, Jean, it's so wonderful to meet you and have the opportunity to talk about your adventure in an author and also some of the projects that you're working on. I know that we have a couple of, I created a few items here that we could actually, and I'm not sure which ones come first in this
Okay. So,
in this part of the equation. So you'll have to guide me on this.
Okay, so that image you're seeing now is it was on a second ago, was the whole trilogy in one volume. So there's
Perfect.
3 books to this series, yes.
Okay,
so this one is available now.
So there's 3 books, and then you could purchase the volume. So you could do either or is it all in one?
You can purchase each volume individually, each book individually, or you can get it all in one volume, either way.
That's pretty cool. I love that. So there's what's the name of this one?
This one is El Mirador, which is the first one.
Okay.
This is called Spanish Seduction is the name of this series. So it's kind of set in Spain and other international locations. There's a little bit of globetrotting in there.
I love that. I love that. And then the another one is
this is El Precio, means
El
the
Precio.
price. Yeah.
So and then the third one is the one that I brought up earlier.
Okay, yes.
And what is
Incendio. Incendio.
Okay, I'll allow you to pronounce it so I don't butcher it. But I want to make sure. So I have to ask, one of the questions I love to ask is, where did you discover the seed of imagination to create this series? And what was it that prompted you to go down this particular path in this international process?
Right.
That's fascinating.
I mean, I've always wanted to write a book ever since I was a little kid. I had a friend of mine in like the 3rd grade that we were both voracious readers. We used to compete who could read the most books in the year, and we all decided that we were gonna write a book someday. And so that seed was always there. And then I took a trip to Spain, is where this whole series started. And driving along the Costa del Sol, I saw this unfinished building. There was just like the steel was up there, and it looked like they either ran out of money and stopped building, or it had already been ravaged or exploded by a bomb or something. And that's why I wanted to know what's the story behind this thing. So I decided to write one. So that's how that was the spark that started it. And
so when did you start on this adventure?
Like the trip, actually, when I visited there was like 1996.
Okay.
So sat there and percolated for a good 10 years at least. And I started writing it actually as part of the NaNoWriMo Challenge, the National Novel Writing Month, which is coming up in a few weeks.
Wow.
And so with some fits and starts, I wrote a couple chapters and kind of left it alone, but then came back to it in earnest in about 2010. And I happened to be working next door to a published author in the building that we were in. So she kind of encouraged me, and she proofread some things and taught me some of the rudimentary things that I still live by to this day. So so I wrote that one, and then I just, somewhere along the way, I just knew I had a trilogy on my hands. It's a bit of a family saga. So
fantastic.
Just kept going.
So I want to dive in a little bit deeper to this the trilogy, because a lot of us think about writing a book, and unlike yourself, maybe we don't always think about it from childhood. However, one book is quite an amazing feat for a lot of us. Mm-hmm. However, 3 books and working a trilogy and multiple books, is that something that comes easy for you? And do you have to think it out, map it out? What's your process? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the idea, I enjoy writing, so it's not a huge task for me, although I'm not a fast writer. So it's not, I don't knock it off in a month kind of thing. But just as the story evolves, I'm a bit of a pantser, so that I write by the seat of my pants. I have a general story arc that I know where it's going to start. I know where it's going to end, but I haven't got a plot written chapter by chapter. I'm starting to do that a bit more now that I've been doing it for a while. But at the time, no, I just let the story goes where it wants to go. And it will shock you sometimes. Like, you'll write something and go, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that, because there's other authors that we've had on the show that say sometimes the characters lead me to where they want to go. Is that a reality in your world?
It is, and that's generally where the next book kind of starts, because that character is kind of like the kid at the back of the class. That's, me, ask me, and you just know you got to tell it from their side of the story, right? So that's usually what happens.
Yeah,
your characters do speak to you, which is strange, but common, as you mentioned. Many authors have told me that same idea.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you like podcasting or live streaming, which I've done for over a decade. And I know we talked about early off before we got on the show, being musicians, there's this sense of you have to produce enough content in order to kind of find your own voice, let alone somebody else's voice in a story. And I love storytelling. I love the process of sharing stories and creating stories. And I continue to hopefully learn to improve as we all attempt to grow our own inventory of content. And it's really amazing to me. I am a published author. However, I think that there's several stories. And one of the challenges that I face for myself is, which story do I pick first? And it's almost like, okay, I have so many things that I'm thinking about, and I just haven't started because I have too many projects already. However, I'm going to do that. So how do you decide what story is going to be next for you?
Oh, wow. You just hit on a hot topic there, because I have a whole file on all the story ideas, and it's usually just a title or something that comes to mind. And because I just mentioned NaNoWriMo, I am going to use that this year to actually get my next one out. And I'm going to try to share it kind of chapter by chapter on some of my my online channels. But yeah, it's tough, because there's the one I've sort of picked. I don't have the whole story arc as well developed as some of the others. So I'm sort of second guessing myself. Maybe I should pick one of the others before November gets here. But I don't know, maybe it's, I'm one of these people that's a completer, and I always feel like I got to go in order. So I'm kind of feeling bad if I pick the latest thing that I'm really jazzed about when I haven't finished the other thing. So that sometimes makes me kind of go back to, finish off something that I started. long ago, and it somehow feels better internally to do that. Although there's something to be said for being inspired. When you've really got that on your mind, you really should get it out on the paper,
Yeah.
on the screen, which doesn't mean you can't do that. You
Sure.
can type it, file it away, and come back to it later, because those are probably the best moments and that's when you write the fastest and the best, is when you're really inspired by a scene that you want to write or something that needs to happen. So I think I don't always do it, but I do try to go back and finish the old ones first and work my way forward. And if people have been asking for it, especially if they've done one, and people seem to really like these series things. I never started out planning to do a series, because if I'm faced with a series, it's like, okay, do I really go back to number one, or what do I do here? Is it okay if I start with number 4 or number 2 or whatever? So yeah,
Exactly.
a lot of times I've written something and somebody says, I really like that. Well, when's the next one coming out? Okay, so if people are asking for it, then that's another clue.
Well, I suspect that there's probably a lot of opportunity, and maybe you've always written fiction, romance or fiction, or is this, or do you have other projects that are going on that you can share with us?
I don't. All of my published works are all in the romance genre.
Okay.
But I write a lot on Medium, and that's more nonfiction stuff, and it's generally about creativity and about things related to that.
I'm a fan
the
of Medium.
Writing process, or the design process, or offshoots of that. My latest one is about what should authors do to protect their estate. What should they do with their will? How do they protect their copyrights and not to forget about those, and how are you going to handle that, and who gets to handle it, and all those kinds of things. So those are considered published works, but they're not novels by any means, and they're nonfiction.
Sure.
So
but it's a body of content that we still have out in the world, and the beauty of where we are right now is when we create this information and we share it to the world, you don't know where it's going to land. You don't know who's going to find it, because one thing I want to mention for the listeners on that are not watching the program at this point in time, idreamofjean.com is where you can find more about Jean Maxwell and all of her activities, future projects, and stay connected and get connected with her, and make sure that you're following up with these authors that we're talking to today. So I find it fascinating that writing is not necessarily a challenge for you, it sounds like. Is there anything that you can recommend to new authors, or somebody just thinking about authors, in how to maybe think about the process, or what they need to think about or consider as they're developing their voice in writing a book, or any kind of a storyline?
Well, generally, good writers are also good readers. And I doubt there's anybody who wants to write a book that isn't an avid reader. And so, if you look at, a book that you really enjoyed, that really grabbed you, or the way, look carefully at how it was written and what it was about it that really grabbed you about it. And maybe you can try to imitate that. Yes, we are all trying to find our own voice, which you will eventually. It's a journey.
Yeah.
But I found a lot of beginner writers, like just colleagues of mine who write articles and stuff. They're trying to be very factual about things, and they have to try to include all these details that aren't really necessary. You can intimate what's going to happen. You don't have to say that, he picked up the pencil and did this, all that kind of stuff. So you got to try to tighten it up. I find people generally beginners anyway, they use too many words, and it's things like, in order to, and you forsooth, and, just write it real simple.
I had a friend tell me once, cut the embroidery and get to the point.
Yes, exactly.
Just make it happen. So how do you know when you're done? I mean, do you write everything and then edit from there and just remove stuff? Or do you kind of structure it along as you go and kind of self-edit on occasion.
Yes, I tend to write very linearly, which not a lot of writers do, and you don't have to do that. Like I said, if you got a hot scene in your mind, you want to get it, just write it. Doesn't
Just
matter
write
if
it.
it's happening in chapter 10 or 20 or whatever it is. But I tend to write from beginning to end. And it's just, I don't know, I guess that's that same habit, wanting to be a finisher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try to complete things. But of course, I will go back and you know, fix something. Or if I'm stuck, I'm not sure where to go in that chapter, I'll move on to something else. You can always come back to it later. A lot of times what you can do is almost do it like recipe cards. You've got this scene and that scene, and you can shuffle them around and change the position of them and put it all, knit it all back together. Or if I realize something is happening now that, oh, gee, this can't happen unless that other thing happens, so I have to go back and make sure I fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
I'm always reading and rereading and editing as I go.
Yeah, I love that. I just really, it's fascinating. When you started talking about that, I was thinking about sheet music, and then recipe cards are probably more appropriate to think about because you can change when things happen based on what the outcomes need to be for the storyline. So it's kind of, I like that. I like that. Just take a page and, you know, put it in perspective and say, okay, well, what needs to happen next in order to make this make sense?
Yes. What's next? And then ask yourself questions. That's what I do a lot. How does he get this way? Why does she feel that way? Where is it? You know, and I just write the answers to these questions, and then a line of dialogue will pop into my head. Oh, good, I can use that. You know?
I love that.
I find the questionnaire thing often helps me to get unstuck if I get stuck.
So you have any upcoming projects that you would like to share with us today?
Well, we mentioned NaNoWriMo. So the project I've chosen, I was planning to start working on that. And through my Medium platform, I was going to publish a chapter at a time, or at least a part of a chapter, to hook them, and then they'll come back and read the next chapter the next day and the next day and the next day. So this one, I don't know if I should reveal the title. It's the intent is for it to be a series, but it's going to be, I normally write contemporary romance. This one is going to be like a gas lamp fantasy horror, more in that genre. So it'll be a bit darker. So
intriguing.
So you can find me on Medium under Author Jean Maxwell. And you'll see, I have, I know you don't, this is sort of recent, so you don't have that bit of information yet, but that's where, you know, I have all my, you know, regular posts, but I'm going to start, have some posts there that are going to go out where you can kind of sign up for the newsletter where you will get these chapters one after the other.
I love that. And Medium is pretty, I like Medium for that reason, because you can actually make connections there and you can actually follow other creators. So it's pretty, it's pretty handy. And I just want to remind anybody that's listening in, Amazon is the place you can go. It's amazon.com/GP/product/B09Z8KD375. And we'll put that in the show notes. And it'll also be in the show notes of all the content that we produce from this episode. But I do want to bring in Liz before we wrap up, and she probably has a few other questions, and we can continue to interrogate Jean. So so let me bring up Liz, and she probably has a few questions that she may want to ask as well.
Everybody's full out. Yeah, for sure. So that's great. And Jean, we appreciate you sharing that process, because as people come back and listen to the show, we want them to know that every author is kind of different and everybody kind of writes in a different way. But talking about your process is really helpful. And like you say, the recipe card thing, you know, whether it's characters or whether it's a scene, it may be location. You know, you gotta get all that in when you're writing fiction, you know, which you don't have to do that when it's nonfiction, but you gotta think about those things, you know, you gotta think about, well, if she's going to meet so-and-so down the road, or there's a third person or whoever's going to come in and cause the problems, where is that going to happen at, and who is that going to be? And like you say, those characters take on a life of their own sometimes. So
they do.
And I don't write fiction. I have great respect for people. I probably started one time to write a fiction thing. I guess I woke up, I had a dream or something, and and it was they were at a chapel. This girl gave this baby to this other person, and there was an older woman there, and she was there, and she's like, oh, I can't take care of this baby, and then she just, you've got to protect my baby.
No.
The thing
that sounds like a great story.
I don't know where it's going from there, so I never read the rest of it. But
it's okay. You don't have to do. You don't have to know.
Just keep
Sometimes
writing.
It will tell you. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like the artist, the sculptor who said, "I don't sculpt the face. The face is already in there in the log. I just take away.
I just have to remove the material around it." Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, so I might one of these days, go this fiction route, but I appreciate that. Well, what do you, because you self-published, didn't you? Or did you, was that always a thing for you, or was that an easy thing for you? Or did you feel like that was a struggle? What do you think about the publishing and marketing? It's pretty easy now, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And there's very little quality control in that regard. It's one of the pitfalls, because you can slap any old cover on there, and quality has to be a thing. I didn't start out self-publishing. I didn't really know what I was going to do, because as I mentioned, I had a coworker next door to me who'd been a published author, and she kind of went the traditional route. She has an agent and an editor and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's a hard row to hoe, from most sources that I see, because you stand a big chance of rejection and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, it's really tough to get anywhere that way. So self-publishing has become a great boon to artists, but there's a lot of e-publishers too, which I didn't know about. So one of my friends or relatives says, wow, it's interesting about e-publishing. So I just started Googling it, and I found a Canadian e-publisher out of Ontario that was publishing romance novels in particular. And they were very new. It's called Evernight.
Evernight, okay, right.
Evernight Publishing, and they do have some print. They're doing some print books now. If something sells really well, they'll make a print edition, but it's mostly ebooks, and it's quite, shall we say, explicit. They do a lot of very very strong
erotica,
romantic themes there. Although they do have different categories, there's some lighter stuff in there. Anyway, they were kind of new, so they were accepting authors quite readily, and they only had a few week window to get your manuscript back to you edited and stuff. So it's taking longer now, but they had a decent compensation percentage was higher than a lot of the others that I had visited, and I just happened to luck out and find them, and they take on at least some of the marketing part for you. They provide an editor free of charge. They provide a cover artist free of charge, and they send it out to all their review sites and stuff. So to kind of you start getting some reviews, fairly quickly, which was important.
Quickly, yeah.
But then they're taking X% of your profit too, and the more self-promotion you do, you're making money for them too. So you got to keep that in mind. So after I discovered KDP, then I decided, well, I'm going to try that route. So I've been doing that ever since, and I still have, I think, one title still with Evernight. It's a short story, and I thought I'd leave it where it was. But it's a 5-year contract. So after 5 years, you get those rights back. So this is how I ended up publishing the whole Spanish series on my own, and changed the cover art and things like that. So now, I'm in charge of the marketing now, which is
well, and that's what we started this whole process with, Jean, was the idea that a lot of people want to write a book, and they really haven't described or defined all of the other pieces that go along with that process. So someone like yourself that's been through that process, identified some of the challenges in publishing, marketing, getting it out there, building a community, building an audience. All of those are pieces of the puzzle that we need to put together in order to find what we call or consider success in publishing. So I think we're as we interview more authors like yourself that have gone through this process, we can help other authors that haven't started yet. So that's our goal and our mission, is to help more people. So
just to get over that trepidation of just starting. I think that's the biggest hurdle, really, is just to start.
Right.
Too late if you don't start now.
Right. And it doesn't matter if you start with a character or a scene or a location or an experience that you had, and then you can change the names. Maybe you've had some kind of experience, and that can be the jump start. Because like you say, once you start, then your imagination takes off and these thoughts just begin to flow and begin to come to you. I think it is encouraging if you have a place where you can write that's quiet, or that you can go to and write on a regular basis, because it just trains your brain. It just trains your mind that when you go to that place and your stuff is there, whatever that is, whether it's your computer or your pen, like I still write longhand. So for me, it may be a notebook and a pen, or a colored pen or something. And then
I was going to say, I have a special notebook. I don't want to write anything else in it besides my fiction stuff. So when I have that book in my hands, because it's been so nice out, I want to go out and do stuff outside. And I really can't take my laptop out there because I can't see the screen and all that stuff. So I will write longhand, and it actually kind of serves as a first draft, because then when you transcribe it, you can add and edit things and that. But yeah, having that particular book in my hand, I know this is what I have to do now. I can't. This is not a to-do list. This is not any of these other things. This is a book for making that story happen.
And that's where the recipe comes from.
Yeah.
That's where the recipe comes from. Well, I really appreciate the time, Jean, and thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And so, Liz, I know that we're running out of time. Any last words that you want to share with us?
We're just going to wrap up. I just want to be sure it's Jean Maxwell, Jean Maxwell, Maxwell. You can find her at Amazon.com. When you get one of her product pages for one of her books, you can click on her name there under the title of the book, whether it's the El Presidio or the Incendio, whichever book you choose. Her name will be there, and you'll be able to get her other books, because she has other series. She has other books. She has some paranormal books. Like you say, she writes mostly contemporary. She has a wonderful thing called Winter Symphony, which is about musicians, and a series there. So go check her out at idreamofjean.com. And I guess any last words, Janice, that you want to tell our listeners today to encourage them?
Like I said, the hardest part is just to start. So get over that hump and write what excites you. You don't have to write, once upon a time and start from there. Just have that scene in your head, like you said, about your dream. Write that.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining us. Jean, thank you. It's always a pleasure to have other authors share their perspective with the Author Adventures. And I just thank you so much. We're here every Tuesday. Follow us
5 o'clock. And next week, we'll be talking with Brian Moreland, as we were mentioning her author, Brian Moreland, because in honor of Halloween, that'll be coming up here. We're going to be talking with Brian, and he's got a bunch of different books about witchcraft and about the Nazis and about, whatever the in the woods, the monster in the woods from Indian lore, and in Canada and the Canadian Rockies. So all kinds of fun stuff coming up next week with Brian. So we appreciate y'all watching and listening today. This has been Liz and Russ for the Author Adventure with Jean Maxwell, romance author. Go and check her out. Go and check us out. You can come back and hear these recordings at any time, and you can go and hear our other author interviews. Check those out as well, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Till next time.
Till next time.